Well, good evening. I'm Sean Bowen, and just to clear up any confusion, in case you haven't noticed, I'm actually not Dick Tremaine. I have to tell you, I never would have imagined, even a year and a half ago, that I'd be standing here in front of you talking about this ministry. My wife and I, Cynthia, I'll tell you a little bit about us. So we moved here 35 years ago. And Dick was our first pastor. I was 23 years old. We came here from Cooperstown, New York. Yes, Cooperstown of baseball fame. How about those Cubs? Hey, when you don't win for like 108 years? Yeah, 86 years for us is nothing. But he was our first pastor here in Hopkinton. I worked in the computer industry. We have been involved in an Assembly of God church plant in Cooperstown, New York. That church is still there. It started in our living room. But we came here. I was in the computer industry, went to work doing network consulting, boring stuff like that, doing support. And by 1998, we got involved in a church plant. Now, I was still working in industry, but I led worship. It was a vineyard church here in Hopkinton. And then about 9 years ago, I finally, and I say finally, recognized the call from God to leave the computer industry and become a full-time associate at the Vineyard Church. Some of my friends are here. They were John and Andrea. You were part of that initial church plant team. That was back in '98. I'm so glad to have you here. But there was something I heard from God, and that's what caused me to go into ministry. And I think it's important you understand this in my role here as the new executive director. You see, it became clear to me that the church is God's plan for redemption through Jesus Christ. It's the church. It's not any other organization. And the verse that really got me was Paul in Ephesians when he says that through the church, the manifold wisdom of God might now be made known to rulers and authorities in heavenly places. Through the church. And also, to him be glory in the church. To him be glory in the church and in Jesus Christ through all generations. You see, it's the church that's God's plan A. There is no plan B. There just isn't. Now, I had this minority position about that. There's a Greek word for church, was ecclesia, or ecclesia, depending on what your pronunciation is. And in the simplest form, it's just a gathering. It's a gathering or an assembly of people with a purpose. And that's what the church is, because it's a gathering, and the beauty of it, it's a gathering of people that have no business sticking together. If you think of the first century, it was Jew and Gentile, male and female, slave and free. Maybe today it would be Democrat and Republican, conservative and liberal, maybe Pentecostal and evangelical and Catholic. God is doing a move today. He's bringing the church together. It's through the church that the manifold wisdom of God is being made known. And that has everything to do with John 17:23. God is all about unity and reconciliation. I know it. Well, as a new executive director, who's not Dick, it's really a joy to have all of you here tonight. And I just want to share with you a couple of things. Dick, when he started this ministry in response to this call of do this and I will bless it, no one then would have imagined where we would be today. And I think Dick very succinctly shared that. And I have to also say that all of you have been a big part of that. Many of you have contributed time, money, prayer. I had Elizabeth do this. This is a stack of pastoral names. And these names are prayed for by name every Friday morning. They were prayed for this morning. So that's a way that you've contributed. So we're here because of that. Well, several months ago, one of our sponsors funded a study, and when you came in, you were given a little blue handout. If you would open that up and take a look at that, and you might be able to see it on the screen, but it's kind of too small to see. So look on the page. One of our donors funded this study by an independent research firm, and we really wanted to know the answer to this question. Do these groups really make any difference at all? Or are we just having a good time as pastors together? We have wonderful stories, but does it really make a difference? Thankfully, for me and in his job, the answer is yes. It does make a difference. It makes a huge difference. And what we found is that there's this ripple effect that as pastors are sustained in these groups, and you heard some of the stories, as they're sustained in these groups, their congregations then become better led. And as congregations are better led, the churches in those communities become more united. And as churches are more united, the communities are served. And there's a bunch of cold statistics. I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but I just want to point out a couple of really powerful things. There's an 83% drop in pastors feeling alone. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. 45% have stronger marriages. Do you want your pastor to have a stronger marriage? Do you think that's important for a church? You betcha. Here's one. This caught the research firm by surprise. 57% drop in unhealthy stress being brought home. When you're a pastor, who else are you going to bring it home to? Do you bring it home to your husband? And he gets to hear of how you're not being handled right by your parishioners? Do you bring it home to your wife? The sheep bites? 57% drop. It's healthy. But notice, as they're sustained, they're led. I was shocked. 48% said they knew how to disciple better. And look how it keeps getting better. This is exciting to me because in John 17:23, there's a so that the world would know. Churches in these groups do 30% more multi-church outreach to their community. I think that's a big deal. I really do. Well, we've had a lot of celebration here tonight. We've talked about how we've made progress and how wonderful these John 17:23 groups are. And we really do want to talk about that, but I want to stir your hearts. I really want to stir your hearts. You see, there's 300 pastors in 60 groups. That's really a very positive thing. There's 300 pastors in 60 groups who have had the benefit of this, and we have celebrated that. But I have to tell you, that sobers me. 300 pastors. That's probably 250 churches. Thousands of congregational members have been blessed. It's amazing. Yet even so, my heart is stirred. Why am I sobered about that? And not just dancing here. Well, in 2012, there was a U.S. religion census done, and it reported, just in a summary, that there were approximately 200,000 evangelical, conservative, or Pentecostal congregations in the United States. And if you add Catholic brothers and sisters and mainline churches, it's another 100,000. So do the math. How many is that? That's 300,000 churches. And we have 300 pastors in 60 groups. That's what sobers me. Because every day that goes by, there's 299,700 pastors who are not receiving the benefit of being sustained, of their congregations being better led, of their churches being united, and of their communities being blessed. So what would happen? What would happen if that 300 was a bigger number? What do you suppose would happen? Now, even if you don't believe the numbers, Barna says something like 60% of pastors have no personal confidant. There's no one to share with. So based on that percentage, there's at least 180,000 pastors that have no one. There's probably 90,000 who are in danger of burning out. Does that sober you? So here's the hope. Based on my belief that the church is it. It's God's plan A, and also based on the fact that these John 17:23 groups work, I know that all of you, together with Dick and the regional directors and the pastors in these groups, have discovered and honed this wonderful gift of the John 17:23 group, and it makes a difference. There's no question. It makes a difference in the lives of pastors, churches, and communities. And so here is my clarion call. It's to me and to all of you. It's my hope is that every pastor everywhere would have the opportunity to be a member of one of these groups. Every pastor everywhere. And if there isn't a group in his or her community, we want to go help them start one. It's that simple. If you leave here not remembering anything we say, remember that. Every pastor everywhere. Now, that might seem like a 299,700. That seems like a big number. To me, that feels like this old phrase we used to use at work about boiling the ocean. Well, I think we can start with something that all of us can start. And really, I consider you as part of the Barnabas team. This is a big transition because Dick obeyed God. He did it, and God blessed it. In the business term, we call that a sole proprietorship. But now we're moving into a new phase. And I believe that you are called with the same call that Dick has. It's no longer, Dick, if you do this, I will bless it. I say this to all of us in this room. If we do this, he will bless it. If we together do this, he will bless it. There's hundreds of thousands of pastors that need this. And we have this precious little jewel. Now there's a parable in the gospel about a ruler who goes away and he gives some of his servants some talents. And one of them buries it in the sand. I don't want to be that man. I don't want to be that servant. And so I believe, and I'm going to throw a number out at you. I think that we could easily, and the board, if they don't like this, I serve at their pleasure. So when we have our board meeting in a month, I may hear about this. But I really think that it would be reasonable. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG, but I think we could have 1,500 pastors in John 17:23 groups within 5 years. That's a five-fold increase. 1,500 pastors in 5 years. Now, it took us how many years to get to 300? 22. I tell you, God's on the move. God is on the move in this area in a way that you can't imagine. Well, what is it going to take? What is it going to take to get 1,500 pastors in these groups? Well, I'll tell you a couple things. You heard about regional directors. We have a bunch of them. I think we're going to need about 15 of them. What does a regional director do? A regional director is a man or a woman, and I'm so glad that Loretta was able to be here. I am so glad that we are finally talking about the city of Boston. Woo-hoo! Yeah, you can woo-hoo back there. How come Worcester has all the fun? What's with that? We need 15 regional directors. Regional director, they have a couple of jobs they do. They care for the groups. We've noticed something. We learned something the hard way as part of doing this ministry. As this ministry grew, we found we could not keep up with the groups the way we were doing it. And I tell you, if a group does not get followed up with, it falls apart. So the secret sauce of Barnabas Ministries is really the regional directors. What they do, what you men and women do in terms of contacting the group, keeping in touch, making sure the group is healthy, that's critical. We need 15 of those. And I'll be fully transparent. I talk about this Gordian knot problem. Right now, up till now, all of our regional directors have been volunteers. I don't think that's going to get us to 1,500. But we're going to need your help to solve that problem. All right, second, we need to train 300 group leaders. We trained a whole bunch up at Toanippi recently, and Rob and I are going to get an airplane in 2 weeks, and we're going to go to Michigan, and we're going to train a bunch more. We're only going there once, because they get to do it the next time. Right, Rob? Right. That's right. Amen. We need to deliver more of this training material online. You know, we got e-learning version 1 done. That was a way of sharing what happens in a group, and Dave and Kathy and others have been participating. We need to do more in that area, and that's going to take some investment. We do these day of refreshments or gift day for pastors. I tell you, we've got a possible great one coming up in May. Possible. We haven't worked all the details out because we need to fund it, and we need your help to do that. But there's a pastor down there who does a ministry called Forgiveness Forward. Boy, we need the work of forgiveness in the church, do we not? Amen. This individual is going to Israel in March. We want to have him here in May if we have the resource to do it. He's going to meet, was it 100 pastors? 100 pastors, half of whom are Palestinian and half of whom are Israeli pastors. It's through the church that the manifold wisdom of God, people coming together who have no business sticking together. That's the power of the Holy Spirit, friends. And that's what we want. So we want to do more of those. We have friends that run marriage seminars, Laugh Your Way. We'd love to see more of those happening. And we need to get the word out about Barnabas Ministries groups. We really do. Now, let me be fully transparent. We were incredibly blessed a couple of years ago. We had a donor come to us and ask Dick, how can I transform this ministry? And this individual contributed $125,000 a year for the past 2 years. And that got us to where we are now. It was a gift from God. That ends January 1st. So we were able to hire Rob. I got hired. We were able to expand. We did e-learning. There's a whole list of accomplishments on this sheet. We were able to get those things done. But to keep the momentum going, we need to replace that. That's a big nut. And so I'm trusting God for that. Now, I was praying, Lord, what should I ask for? What should I ask for? And I think it's reasonable to ask that by January 1st, is that we actually raise or have pledged $125,000 to help keep the momentum going in this ministry. Because there's 100 to replace what was missing, but this is advancing forward. The word is getting out. Let me give you a couple of examples, and these are within the last few months. We had a wonderful blessing to go to the Assembly of God, has a Southern New England group. Nick, it's so great to have you here. We met with pastors there. Some of those pastors are now in a group. There's one in my group, and there's more that are interested. 2 weeks ago, Rob and I went down to Virginia with the Foursquare Conference. Chris, it's great to see you. We hung out over at the airport for a couple of hours, in the back. We spoke to, it looked like there were 700 people there, and we were talking to pastors from like 8 in the morning till midnight. I think we were going till 12:30. I had a pastor come to me from Philadelphia who said, we need this. I had a little brochure with that little chart on the back. He says, can I have that? I have to take this back. How do we get this going? How do we get this going in Cleveland? How do we get this going in Maine? How do we get this going in New Jersey? There's a call. The word is getting out. So when Rob and I were down in Virginia, we took the liberty of doing a person on the street interview, of interviewing some pastors, and we asked some pastors 2 questions. What are some of the challenges of pastoring today? And why do pastors need to be connected? Let's roll it.
Well, you know what? I think more important than anything is as Foursquare, I think we've become known pretty much almost worldwide that we are a family. We're a Foursquare family. But in our specific regions and in our specific church communities, we need to take a mentality further. We need to take that same thought and we need to make it a church family, not just a Foursquare family, so that we can actually pastor our communities together and forget about all these stupid lines in the sand that over some little doctrinal difference.
How urgent is it for pastors to get together?
I think it's imperative. I mean, otherwise you wind up out there all by yourself, and everybody knows it's better than pastoring A&M at all. If you're sitting out there all by yourself, you're a sitting duck for the enemy.
Well, obviously, I think they faced many challenges, but I think being alone and feeling like you don't have a lot of peers, and so there's a lot of weight that's carried on the pastor's shoulders, and there's not really a network of people where you can share your struggles, your difficulties, whether that's internal difficulties, whether it's with your staff, your team members, and so being able to have a network of pastors and leaders where people can come together and really share each other's burdens, I think is a huge, valuable thing for pastors in all of the different communities.
Well, we're from New Jersey, and around us, around New York City area, everyone does their own thing. There's no interconnectedness at all between pastors or churches. A couple times I've tried to meet with other pastors for prayer. It lasts for a week or two, 3 weeks maybe, and they all go back to doing their own thing. So there's really lack of community within the New Jersey area among pastors.
I work for a district office, and we have 200 churches, and I feel like, from what I know of those churches, that the reason why pastors need to connect are a few reasons, never just one easy answer. But one, I feel like pastors are on kind of an elevated level. They're in a position where they're serving, they can't really share completely free, filterless with their congregation. So this is a safe place, confidential, and someone that really gets it, what they're going through. The other reason I feel is to network. Churches they know how to stretch a penny and still walk away with a dime. And so I feel like when they're able to connect and share ideas, they come away with best practices, shared resources that maybe they didn't have to pay for. They're able to resource other churches and barter, and it really makes the body of Christ become that unified force that we hope it to be. So I think it's really important for pastors to connect, and Barnabas Ministries is a great way for them to do it.
I've just found that one of the greatest traps in ministry is isolation, and I've watched a lot of guys. Just had a friend a couple weeks ago ended up having to step down from his assignment, and just because of the isolation, there were things kept in the dark, and I think things that, had he been in community with others, maybe could have just opened up and gotten some healing that was needed. And I look at that and I go, man, if I can help more guys just find relationship that they can then be set free in that place of light and just encouragement, then I know that we're going to see a lot more guys, finish well. And that's my hope. Isolation keeps you from finishing well, but when you stay connected, you're stronger together.
Yeah. So when you have somebody else with you to do life with you, to do ministry with you, walking hand in hand, it takes the burden off and it takes the stress down. And so we need
integrity, holding each other accountable, loving on each other, praying for one another, holding each other up. Because if we don't, nobody else is going to do it for us. But pastors loving on each other and caring for each other, a lot can happen.
Thank you so much. So none of the people you saw in that video are in a group yet, because they just found out about it. So what about New Jersey? What about Maine? What about Cape Cod? What about Cleveland or New Hampshire? There are pastors in every one of those places that need the precious gem of John 17:23 groups that you all have helped create. It's time to not hold that to ourselves. I believe that these pastors that you just saw are your Macedonian call. Paul was in Bithynia, and he had a dream, and somebody says, come over here. Come over here. These men and women are part of the 299,000 are calling to you. Will you help? Will you come and help us?